Hello, everyone. Welcome back to World ECDIS Day 2025. I would like to first say Guten Tag. And as we are in Hamburg, I would like to use my favorite sentences, Moin Moin. With Moin Moin. Yeah, there we go. We did think about making the session fully in German for the purposes, of course, of Kevin and Matthew specifically, but then decided to do it otherwise. I did take a course on Duolingo over an evening in German and failed. It's not the only thing that I'm missing today. I'm also missing, for everybody's information, knowledge on S100. I did have a crash course 2 days ago with some of the very experienced colleagues that we have in the company. So I will purely be moderating and not providing any expert opinions today. My name is Alex. I've just joined Chartworld. I have a brief history with onboard sailing. I've got long history with Transas, and I've got a brief history with e-learning and educational purposes for seafarers. It is with a great honor that I get to introduce you to our guests and experts today. So, Friedhelm Mogert from CARIS, Matthew Garland from UKHO, Kevin Black from Primar, and Henrik Gorman from Seven Seas. We do have some of the questions prepared. I know some of them were already addressed during the questions and answers session by Matthew. We'll nevertheless try and go through them to hear the other experts' opinions. I will be keeping a close eye on the clock. We also have the clock over there for the panelists. I will be very strict, and I will be interrupting and hopefully moderating us in the right direction. Yeah, we also have the Slido QR code. All you need to do is just point your mobile phone on it with the open camera. It will open a website and allow for you to ask questions. I will be monitoring the questions on my mobile device, and in case there is anything urgent and fantastic, we will interrupt the session, and I can guarantee that we will answer all the questions. To begin with, during my crash course introduction and shortly after, I've gone through a document published by IHO, and it's a document on S100. I didn't go through the complete document, but at least a big part of it that was recommended. We'll start with some dates and a simple question for the panelists. Development of S100, as mentioned previously, began in 2001. It was first published by the International Hydrographic Organization in 2010. Since 2015, it got a dedicated S100 working group, and original go-live for S100 ECDIS vision was 2025. Now we have a firm requirement, and I believe, Matthew, you've highlighted on that, firm requirement for 2029 and the voluntary requirement for 2026. You've already answered the question, do you believe it is possible? So I would like to ask the rest of the panelists the same question. Friedhelm, we'll start with you. Is 2029 a realistic target? Is 2026 a realistic target from the OEM perspective?
Thank you. That's a very good question. Since today I'm wearing my CARIS hat, I'm looking at that part of the entire story on S100 and S100 production, where we talk about producing the data. In order to produce S101 data, well, we need software, we need production systems, and many of the CARIS customers have been using CARIS solutions to produce S57. And CARIS is in the process of providing them all the assistance to make them ready to also produce S101 data. So I had a discussion during the break where I highlighted that dual fuel was one of the key words in the previous presentation. For the hydrographic offices, this means that they have to keep on creating S57 data and S101 data at the same time, which will be an extra effort for them, of course. And so the challenge is to develop production systems that can assist them to fulfill these requirements. And somebody says, yeah, it's not so difficult, it's just a conversion, isn't it? And I believe up till a couple of years ago, there was a belief that we could just switch the data from S57 to S101, maybe while we import it in the ECDIS. But meanwhile, we know better. We had to go through some hard lessons, and it is not like that. It really requires systems that model data from one format to the other. So and sometimes you have a mapping from one feature here, two features there, and so on. I want to go into the details. So I'm confident that the production systems as such are in a good shape, but also it's not just providing software and here you go. It also has to come with a lot of support, with a lot of assistance, and it also will rely on the skills of the producers by themselves. So to be honest, the production is just one part, and then there are a couple of more steps, and at the end of the chain there is the ECDIS. So I have my doubts that we will see S100 ECDIS flying in 2026. So I guess you mentioned 2028, which is probably more realistic then.
Thank you. Thank you. Kevin, maybe next to you. Same question.
Yeah, thank you. I think you touched on a few good points there of the production tools, but looking at it from a rank perspective, we're quite optimistic in the view of those targets just because we're currently very much working in the now. We're looking at data conversion now. We're looking at organizations who are working with transferring their data between databases, converting their databases, looking at creating new products, upskilling their colleagues, putting new systems in place, all the other administrative steps that happen in there. Then there's also our own increased capacity of adding an extra product to our sort of delivery. It's S57 4.0, I suppose. S100, S101 is another ENC in effect. So we have to go through the validation process for that. So it's a duplication of effort on production, output, and also in the rank for the quality approval process. So for those who are not aware, the ranks provide a simulation and quality control, a consistency program of bringing data in, checking that it meets the defined standards, and we have operational standards now for the first phase of S100. And that means there will be a lot more time put into working with those to make sure they actually perform what they're supposed to, and the data is being created to that standard. We check that that is correct before then it gets passed on or disseminated to paying customers, to the end user, to the mariner. So I think that means right now we are very much looking at the targets as they are defined and working towards them as we would expect them to be in place, so that we don't push our own internal projects back and our own internal delivery further back because of that. We want to try and be ready for that if we can, but then there are further conversations to have with the OEMs with data loading into systems. So we will test the data we receive, the trial data from lots of test implementations, similar to what Matt has already discussed, and view that and feed back to those producers and maybe help them correct or implement slightly different display or loading implementations, just because it will fit the standard better, work better for the end user, and be a better product. So I think,
thank you.
Yeah, yes is the answer, but that's for our internal delivery.
It does sound positive. Thank you, Kevin. Hendrik, from the tools perspective, are we advancing towards these deadlines as an industry? What can you say from 7C's side?
Yes, okay. From our perspective, I see we sit actually at the end of the pipe. So data production, data distribution, checking, and everything. We need to be pretty much aware of what test data is in the market or what's available for us. That's why we're really happy to be engaged with UKHO in this sea trial so that we can actually, I don't know if you mentioned, but we played a little bit of ping pong a few times with the data. Yeah, it actually helped to enhance the current state of our software. Also, I think it enhanced the way of you produced your data in a, let's say, more compliant way. So sitting in the position of a SDK provider or OEM, I would actually, to cut the long story short, agree that 2028 is a reasonable date if we don't fall into, let's say, bigger traps, which we hopefully don't.
Thank you. And Matthew, last but not least, anything to add to your previous comments and statements?
Everyone's probably fed up with me by now. Yeah, a couple of comments. From a UKHO perspective, I touched on that we're already creating production level data sets for the trials. So from our position, I feel like we are on track for 2029. Regarding 2026, yes, I think it's unrealistic to expect an approved ECDIS in the market, but potentially it doesn't stop other areas where the compliance isn't required. So perhaps in a backup bridge space, kind of voice optimization, perhaps something like that, the S100 data could be used. But yeah, it's a challenging date, 2029, especially when you talk about 2028 potentially being the date that we see an approved ECDIS. It doesn't leave much time for training and things like that. I think what I will say is that we'll know more. I think potentially even next week. I think it's the S100 working group, actually working group next week, and they're discussing S164 and S98. They're close to being mature, but once we have a deadline on when they will be operationally mature, it will help the OEMs understand when they can potentially start to look at approving their ECDIS for type approval.
Thank you. Thank you, Matthew. I can see some questions coming in, and I will try to merge some of them into the questions that we already had. I've got some quotes from the very same lovely document that I referred to, and there's a lot of reference to the user of S100 being the developers. So it's to develop and maintain hydrographic-related data. It is to be able to build constituent parts of an S100 compliant product specification. Only a few times does it actually mention mariners and other users. I do believe that the seafarers are an absolute key user and actor in such an important development. And I see that there is also a question online that goes in line with what is the benefit for the mariners on board of having the new standards and the newly available data, considering that some of the data may be over 100 years old. And this is the part that I've taken from the online, so I can't validate that myself. We'll start with Kevin, please.
All right, thank you. Yes, I think I'll begin by almost reiterating what I said before. The S101 ENC is the next version of S57. But where did S57 come from? That was a digitized version of paper charts. It's a relatively static representation of what was a raster product. There was other and has been other functionality added on top of that by organizations, but the premise of the S101 product is it's the base layer to add lots of interoperable services to, as demonstrated very clearly by Matt in his presentation with the variable depth levels to guide the safety contours, to have much more accurate and much more relevant safety contours applied to passages, and to allow a lot more strict management of the application to those sort of depths and underkeel clearances. So it's allowing mariners to make better decisions. It's providing all that information in one visualization, so they don't have to calculate or add extra values to what is a base level information depth, and then add calculations of tides and add other factors to that. It gives them a much more stable and readily available decision-making tool.
And it becomes a benefit not only to mariners, but the company as well, as I believe was highlighted by Matthew.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. But yeah, I agree entirely. The end user is not just the navigator; it is the company. They want to reach their decarbonization goals. They want to reach their time to port arrival times. They want to make sure they manage their costs effectively for fuel consumption. All these different factors can be incorporated into the interoperable layers that are placed on top of the S101 ENC, which makes it a much more effective tool for navigation and planning as well.
Matthew, thank you so much, Kevin. Maybe I'll address the same question to you. Do you believe there are any other benefits for the seafarers, users, or wider scope of users?
I think Kevin covered most of it, to be honest with you. Just one point to make that, yeah, I understand the comments regarding some data potentially being hundreds of years old. We package up these shiny ENCs, but the actual data that it's come from, yeah, it could be said from the 19th century. In fact, I've compiled charts using 19th century surveys. Obviously not important regions, important channels, I must add. But just to comment on that, with S102, to create S102 datasets, it needs to come from high quality multi-beam surveys. You can't just have any rubbish go in. You can't have any lead line soundings in because it just won't display correctly on screen. So just to say that with S102, it will be of good, high quality, high resolution. So the point of saying that the data is potentially old, just packaged up, isn't true for an S102.
And the ability to disable the view of the depth soundings, right? That was highlighted by Bjorn.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, if you toggle on your S102 data layer, that then becomes what you see on screen. And yeah, Bjorn misses his soundings, I know, but they're still there.
Perfect. Thank you. Again, very much in line with the questions that are coming up online. In the IHO document, it says the transition from S57 to S100 will be carefully monitored by the IHO to ensure that existing S57 users, particularly ENC stakeholders, are not adversely affected. It will continue to exist as the designated format. So eventually, there is no set date. There is no set deadline. It is going to be this dual fuel mode. I'm starting to enjoy the term. With no clear guidance on the overlap period. Friedhelm, I'll address that to you. Emphasis on eventually the overlap will finish. What is the impact of the production mechanisms for your customers? Does this mean more data? Does this mean double data? Please.
Thank you. Yes, that's a very good question. So we talked about dual fuel a couple of times, and we were having in mind the dual use of or simultaneous use of S101 and S57 in an ECDIS. But for a data producer, the impact is like this, that for every S57 data set that you are producing today, you will have to produce an equivalent S101 data set. So just the fact that a data producer like a hydrographic office starts producing S101 doesn't relieve them from the obligation to continue with S57 production. And this is not only because the new S100 ECDIS is dual fuel capable, but this is also required because 2028, 2029, there will still be many legacy ECDIS systems sailing, which still depend on S57 data. So this has an impact on the way we produce the data. The hydrographic offices do not have double as much time to produce both products. On top, they have to produce additional products like S102 and S104, which means it's not just a duplication, it's just, many more data sets, many more layers of data that need to be produced. In order to address this challenge, we have to change the way how we produce data, how we create data. Automation is the key here. So what we at Keras try to do is that we are in a process of where we look at each individual step in the data production chain, and we try to automate these things as much as possible, so that we do not have a cartographer doing manual changes, but as much as possible, if new data is coming in and it's added to the production database, all these new products can be derived from it on a certain event or event-driven or data-driven. And if we're not successful with this, it will be very difficult to keep up with these production and the demands on the productions.
Thank you. And a similar question as a follow-up to Hendrik. How much change is actually necessary for S100? How will that affect product development mechanics? And how can the products be future compatible, backwards compatible, dual fuel, and just on the example of your expertise?
Yeah, from my experience that we have since the last years and the integration into our tools, and I think the other OEMs in the room who are starting or working on it already know the challenges that we have is we need to integrate the most recent versions. That's why we as 7Cs were hardly engaged with IHO in the working groups and try also to foster the discussions and to keep track with the changes as soon as possible. Nevertheless, the software that we provide with our Nautilus kernel is of course capable of handling S57 data, because we have been doing that with EC 2007 already. The knowledge is integrated into that product. With S100 or S101, we had to really check the framework, the S100 framework, integrate the special encodings and all the information that is needed, metadata interpretation, to get that up to speed and to get it on the screen. We still sometimes face challenges. That's, I think, totally understandable. But for the C trial, what Matt shows in the beginning, we used S57 in the background, which to show S102 on top. Worked very well, and within the last trials, we just exchanged that, and it was also working as well. So I think the software that is produced just needs to stick to the latest updates of the IHO standard, so the operational versions that are released. And future changes can be, just to give a little bit of outlook, so if we will face changes to the part of the standard that is machine readable, so Matt showed that on one of his slides, machine readable feature catalog, machine readable portrait catalog, that can be then handled very easily. But the basic structure, the framework needs to be implemented first.
How far in advance would the manufacturers need this sort of, access to this sort of information?
That is a very good question. I think when I joined the company in 2017 as a small data manager, my colleague Holger Butin already worked on that. But I'm not sure, because I was not involved in that. Maybe Friedhelm, you know? I don't know. When did Holger start? When did we start working on that? I think 7-8 years ago, or even before.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I've got a follow-up for Kevin. The full data set provided by RANKS and UKHO will have to allow users who are not yet up to speed with S100, will need to allow for them to participate as well. There is a question online that mentions specific regions like Africa and Brazil. How will this be affecting the distribution mechanics? will there be an interruption to service? And what is your view on availability and the unavailability of the data?
Okay, there's I suppose a two-part question with looking at the data as a dual production, and it's already been touched on already that it needs to be two products produced from possibly the same information source. That's doubling up of effort. There is research or investigation into automation, into extra functionality to make that happen more quickly with less effort and less time. On the RINC's position, we also have a duplication of effort when it comes to quality assuring that data. We are quality assuring the S57 ENCs and the S101 ENCs against different sets of quality checks because of the different data models. So we have to build our systems to automate that as much as possible, again, using tools available, possibly looking into AI and delivering that. So the effort is negligible in delaying the delivery of those data packages to the end user. So we want to make sure it's as smooth as possible. So really, we want to keep that information flow at least as quick as it is today. There will be no gaps because where there is S57 data existing, it will persist. There will be S101 data captured as well, but that will not mean that S57 coverage in that area will then be taken away. The second part of that is dealing with nations who maybe have reduced capability for data production. A lot of our members and rank members are quite a broad brush of capabilities. You have very large hydrographic offices with great funding for research, development, and implementation of technology and systems and software, down to hydrographic offices who are maybe one or two people, literally one or two people in the office. So there is a great disparity in ability. That means those offices come to their ranks, if they're members of a rank, and look for uplift in skills, support, and the ranks provide support, financial support for implementation of schemes that nations can apply for, and they can determine what they're applying for, whether it's software training, skills uplifts, and that is being delivered and has been delivered over the past number of years, and helps bring the capability of organizations that maybe currently only output S57 to look to the future and move more quickly towards S101 and other dataset S100 product deliveries.
Thank you, Kevin. And maybe a quick follow, please. Yes, Friedhelm.
I just want to pick up what you mentioned regarding training, capacity building. So while we are sitting here apparently representing different companies or organizations, I would like to highlight that despite the fact that we are a manufacturer and we have an hydrographic office and we have a rank and another manufacturer, there's a lot of cooperation. Also, when it comes to this capacity building and training programs, there have been many projects where industry and the ranks or the hydrographic offices have run workshops where industry has provided software that participants could use so that we help, or that the community really helps to bring everybody up to speed as fast as possible.
Thank you. And the question I had for Matthew as a follow-up to the answer is, from the perspective of not necessarily UKHO, but maybe IHO as a larger organization, are there any movements towards eradicating this lack of data? The lack of availability of the data from specific regions. Is IHO taking any steps to help the regions or to mandate them?
That's a really good question. So yeah, just to be clear, I'm not really part of any of the IHO working groups myself, so I'm not too close to it. So it's hard for me to comment on the IHO. Perhaps someone else can do that. But from a UKHO point of view, sorry to come back to us, but we're running capacity building campaigns all the time. In fact, I think we have a lady from South Africa coming over next week for training. We have a dedicated training team to help other smaller hydrographic offices that Kevin pointed out. So yeah, we're certainly doing our bit, but from an IHO perspective, I'm sure they are doing something. I don't know what. I'll hold my hand up. But yeah, perhaps someone else in the panel. Kev, do you know? Thanks for saying.
I think, yeah, going back to what I've mentioned earlier, is the provision of services from RINCs to support organizations who don't have the financial backing, the knowledge, or the infrastructure in place to deliver what is coming for them in the near future. It has been stated by a couple of smaller organizations, they just don't have the capacity. They don't have the time to both produce paper charts and S57 ENCs, and then even look to building their S101 infrastructure. So the capacity building funds that exist and have been rolling out training by outsourcing private enterprises to deliver training across the globe has been in effect for a number of years. So that is a good way of bringing that knowledge to the organizations that produce the data. But I think it was maybe questioned earlier somewhere that what is going to happen with the S102, the other data products, how will they be mandated to be used? Well, possibly to accelerate the delivery of those. Port state controls can issue their preferences for what they would like to see in the future in S101 or S100 ECDIS. If they're installed, you must display S102 information if you have that packaged, if it is available. So it could be by default in the future, if there is better data available and S57 data is not, it would encourage people to purchase or install S100 ECDIS when there is an option. But that's a much further in the future conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you for stepping in as well. The next question is on maritime connectivity platform. So I'll address that to everybody, of course, but I'll start with Matthew. Maritime connectivity platform is all about automated and centralized distribution of data to the end users. Do you believe that there are some of the products that will follow a traditional distribution model instead of this centralized? And do you have an idea on when this MCP or platform may be full speed?
Thanks for that question, Alex. Yeah, that's a controversial subject, I think, at the moment. So from what I know, at the moment, CCOM, the MCP, is only, at the moment, we're looking at the route transfer information, so S421, that should be used as part of CCOM or via an MCP platform. I think S124 and S129, the exchange of that, those data sets could be used as well as part of CCOM, but it's not a should. There's a big difference between could and should. So the rest, the 101, the 102, 104, 111, I believe, unless things have changed recently, will continue to be delivered in the traditional sense that you're familiar with. So we're talking, UKHO, rank, VAR, customer, or if the producer nation doesn't use a rank, UKHO, HO, sorry, slip of the tongue there. HO, VAR, direct to customer. So yeah, at the moment, as far as I'm aware, CCOM will just be used for one product specification at the moment.
Very good. This is super reassuring and very positive for us as a completely uninterested party in the question.
Yeah, sure.
No, thank you so much. Anything to add from anyone? Yeah, Kevin?
Oh yeah, thanks, Matt. I think I'd echo what you've said. The dynamic and more time relative products are almost custom made for that type of distribution. S124 in particular, you want to have as little constraint as possible, getting that from production to the end user. So trying to make sure that can get delivered as quickly as possible is a benefit. But I would also almost change the question a little bit and ask, well, with MTP in place, and you mentioned traditional routes, what will the ranks be in the future? What will they do? Will they need to exist? Is there a purpose to them with MCP in place? And I would say very strongly, echoing what Matt said again, the quality assurance of available data is what is the strength of the traditional delivery chain. It gets sent from a producer to a quality assurance, to a customer support and delivery agent, and you have multiple steps in there that make sure it is suitable for the end user, but also that there is the service in place if something is incorrect or does happen with that data and your systems. So it's very strong in my mind that most services will remain in there, because I look at MCP as a shopping list of services, but how do you know their quality assured data availability? You can pick off that list direct supplies of data, but you're not really sure that it complies with the standards it's supposed to, because it's potentially registered as a data producer, but what are the quality levels?
Thank you, Kevin. Please don't give up the microphone. A follow-up is straight for you. At least I've counted in the S100 data model, about 18 S1XX products, or product specifications. S101 as example, S102, S103, S104, S111, 121, 122. We've mentioned many of them, right? Even more if we include Ayala, marine weather, and the likes of S2XX, etc. Which ones will be supplied by RENKS as a value-added reseller in this new model, or which ones would you tend to keep?
Tend to keep. That's a good way of looking at it. Which ones do we have a preference for? But already 101, S101, S102, S104, and S111 are available as commercially available data sets through Primar. So that just indicates that in the first phase of delivery, we're trying to make it visible that functional data can be put through the existing framework and supplied to users using the new versions of the security mechanism. So instead of the S57 related security mechanisms, you have the S100 part 15, I believe, which ensures that there are other steps in place, signing of data, everything. I think Matt's addressed it in his presentation. Everything has to be encrypted. It tries to tighten up some of the holes that were in the data supply chain previously, just to try and stop ingress into onboard systems and sort of data spoofing and data corruption. So I think that it just means that as a package of data, there's nothing that is outside of that. S124 is we're currently having trials with SICOM partners and have projects in place to make sure that can be an accurate and effective delivery as well. So I think everything is in scope. We're working with the current live, relatively mature product specifications and delivering them as they come to that stage of maturity.
Kevin, thank you. You mentioned packages, and a follow-up personally from me, because I'm quite commercial in the nature, and I can tell you that it's also the most popular question online on Slido. Not surprising. The individual products that we've named, will they be bundled up? Will they be distributed individually? And will they incur additional costs?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think the functionality we have available now is that they can be selected as a package, as a bundle. They can be selected individually, depending on what you already have in your inventory. You may look at having the more dynamic, time-limited data supply products, the S104, S111, as additional purchases again and again, as and when you need them. So to package everything up may be overkill, because it's not a one-time purchase. There's repetition in purchase and licensing that maybe wasn't such a significant factor before.
Thank you, Kevin. As the next question, we will take the following. One of the primary goals of S100, according to IHO, is to support a greater variety of hydrographic-related digital data sources, products, and customers. And I'll address this to Matthew. It's specifically aimed at allowing direct input from non-IHO stakeholders, increasing the likelihood that these potential users will maximize the use of hydrographic data in their particular purposes. We spoke a little bit about this earlier today, but for the wider audience, do you see this idea of easier integration and other applications being actually included in the S100 and uses outside of navigation and ECDIS particularly, of course?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. The S-Work framework's designed to be flexible and versatile and interoperable. Use that word a lot of times today. And as I covered in my presentation, I think perhaps some of you in the audience were surprised to see other domains other than the IHO and hydrographic offices feeding into the framework. As you said yourself, Alex, there's IALA, there's IEC, there's WMO. So in theory, if they all conform to their products all conform to the S100 framework, I see no reason for other organizations to come in, take the product specifications they want, and if their systems are S100 compatible, it should load and it should work in their systems. So yeah, I think it's the IHO's aim to increase the pool, I guess, of people using hydrographic data, and by making it flexible and interoperable, I think we'll absolutely see some external companies and sectors come in that haven't been using hydrographic data before. I don't know on examples, top of my head. I don't know, perhaps oil and gas industry, conservationists, environmental organizations, I guess, would be interested in the type of data that could be acquired from this S100 standard.
Perfect, thank you. And just not only to give a break to Kevin and Matthew, but also to hear the perspective of the manufacturers. Friedhelm, the same question to you on behalf of the tools manufacturer. Are there any defined requirements which support this wider integration of more users, stakeholders outside of classic ones?
Yeah, I would say the basis, since we have a framework standard S100, which pretty much describes how an S100 product must be cooked. So it provides us with an overview about the ingredients and the recipes. And this schema or this approach can be applied to any product or any kind of geospatial data. So the way the production systems have been designed, all you need to do is just to change the ingredients, assuming they follow the S100 rules, and you can apply these to produce an ENC, or you can apply these to produce some other S100 layer. So it always follows a specific principle. So you need a definition of features and how these are described. You probably need to maybe some quality assurance rules, things like this. But this can be applied to a variety of products if there is a need for such products. When you addressed the initial question to Matthew, I understood it a bit different. And so I had a question in my mind. So far the S57 ENCs have been, or the licensing schema has been set up for the use in ECDIS, safety of navigation. So it was very difficult to use this data in other domains. And while the S100 standard is based on some GIS standards in the background, which imply that you could use this data in other context. I don't know if I may ask a question, if Kevin or you, Matthew, if you know if there are any ideas to extend the licensing schema to allow the use of this data, which primarily is used for safety, for safe navigation, to a broader community. And yeah, I don't know who wants to. Sorry for taking over here.
Please, by all means.
Yeah. So another good question. Thank you. And yeah, it's very relevant when we're looking at investing huge amounts of time, energy, and infrastructure delivery into producing a new standard. We want to see it as being as used as widely as possible, being as functional as possible, and especially for commercial organizations who produce that data to get extra returns from other places. So the ranks in particular have investigated and implemented and are starting to see a little bit of traction with deliveries of data for not for navigational purposes. So looking at web delivery or web tool delivery and integration into other apps and functions, as Matt says, whatever they may be, oil and gas, maybe nature reserve preservation, environmental concerns, governmental agencies requiring data from their neighbors. It's possibly a more readily available source if they can just grab it from a streaming service. And they are already being accepted by members because they see it as a combination of increased revenue, but also validation of their data production. They're seeing it in more places. And everyone wants to see their work in more visible places, don't they? See it on a navigational tool or see it on a handheld device, and you can identify your organization's data deliveries in there. It's a good thing.
Thank you, Kevin. And continuing on the same subject, maybe a question for you, Hendrik. Yeah. Continuing on speaking about the data collection, data sharing, and availability of the same. The ECDIS is now a data collector on board. And this doesn't necessarily have to speak to you as 7C's representative, but general trivia. Would it be a good idea to allow for ECDIS to share more data with a wider amount of stakeholders? And is there idea, I believe this as a question right now, to maybe for ECDIS to take on additional data that's coming outside of the traditional maritime? And I think it specifically mentions low-flying objects. I think we all know what it means and where it's coming from. So what's your view?
Well, of course, I mean, the ECDIS in the initial idea was, of course, always for safety of navigation, and the standards have been from the beginning designed around that. But I'm of course of the opinion that we need to broaden it up to digest as much data as possible, as long as it doesn't crash any system. So we need to ensure data integrity, data validity. So we cannot open up all the doors in any directions and let everything in. But I don't think that was where you're pointing to. I just wanted to emphasize this. If we open up the applications to a broader variety of data, then we need to ensure that the data is at least somehow basic compliant to any standard that can be digested. And of course, sharing along a internal in the vessel, I'm a big fan of that, actually. I really support that idea that we can share data.
Without overloading the system with not necessarily the most useful data. Right?
Yes.
Okay. We're pretty much at the end of our allocated time slot for the panel, but any closing statements, anything that you wanted to address but didn't get a chance? Kevin, we'll start with yourself, please.
Yeah. Thank you, and thank you for hosting. It's been very good discussion. I think I'll go back to something Friedhelm mentioned near the beginning, maybe, and it's the collaboration. There is a lot of interaction between all the different stakeholders in this environment. There is a lot of, within the RINC, I see a lot of communication from data suppliers, from OEMs, from software producers, from everyone involved in the data supply. And just addressing the last question again, the network has already opened up beyond what it had ever been seen to be previously, because we're now dealing with different organizations within governmental bodies, sending weather data, sending tidal data that was always or predominantly sent through the hydrographic offices as a quality control measure and verification tool before. So we are now receiving, or it has potential to receive, more streams of data from different deliverers.
Thank you, Kevin. Anything to add, Hendrik?
Yeah, I want to pick up one point that has also been dropped in the beginning of the discussion, is the seafarer's view, or the mariner's view, as, let's say, from more of the point of how to digest the data. I just want to highlight that we need to ensure, if we have a lot of stakeholders in the room, data producers, shipping companies, OEMs, in the end, a seafarer or a mariner has to deal with what he's seeing on the screen. And that's why we need to ensure that we keep it, that we enrich the situational awareness with the data that we have, but we need to ensure that we keep it as simple as possible to keep it understandable for the end user. That's the point I want to put on the end.
I would like to hijack from myself, and sorry, Matthew, just a little off topic. I don't remember exactly how many alarms there were, but I tend to believe that it was reduced from 124 sounding alarms to 4. And that's made a significant difference on board the vessels, especially in terms of clicking the mute alert button. Yeah. Please, Matthew, closing statements.
Okay, I'll be short and sweet because you've heard enough from me today already. Just to echo Kevin's comments on collaboration, because along the whole chain, we rely on each other. We need the production tools to create the data. We need OEMs to display our data in, and it works vice versa. So yeah, we all have to be in this together. I take heart from the sea trials that we're doing, that we are all mucking in and being part of something to help progress these S100 standards, because yeah, there are some potential banana skins in the next few years that I think we can overcome if we all collaborate and work together. Bit cheesy, I know, but yeah.
No, thank you so much. Cannot have enough of you, and very best of luck, of course, for the trials. And really, thank you from the industry for taking on such an important role. Please.
Last word?
Yeah.
Okay. I had a little bit of time to think what could be my final conclusion here, or my final message for the audience. And it has been touched upon that just because we use S100 doesn't by itself make the data better or better quality. The quality of the data pretty much depends on the source, and if the source is crap, the product will be crap. At least in S100, it will have the information how good it is. And when we look at the data layers that are supported by S100, this type of data is not new. When we look at S102, we have seen grid bathymetry 3D models of the sea bottom 20 years ago. And we have dealt with current data many, many times ago, doing modeling and so on and so on. So what's so special about S100? If stakeholders or parties wanted to use this data, so different departments had to sit together, give me your data, okay, there's something, and I can tweak it here, and whoops, I can visualize it. What we're talking about here with S100 is something different, or what one of the biggest challenges is that we talk about an international standard which allows stakeholder A in country whatever to produce the data according to this recipe book, and then another stakeholder, the ECDIS manufacturer, whoever, who has never spoken to this party, they can just ingest the data if they follow the same standards. And I think that's one of the important things we have to keep in mind. So it's not necessarily about new data, but it's the way how is it is exchanged without having different organizations talk to each other and tweak until something works. It has to work. If everything goes by the book, it has to work as it's supposed to without tweaking the data.
Thank you so much. And please join me, everybody, in thanking the panel of experts with a great round of applause. Dankeschön.